What's happening, guys? Matt Sheriff here, and in this video I want to talk about Bitcoin forking. And I know for a lot of people talking about Bitcoin, blockchain, forking, it's all these crazy terms and it can be quite confusing. So in this video I want to break it down into more simple terms, more layman terms, and hopefully get something out of this video and can kind of process all of this stuff that's going on. So to start with, let's talk about what a Bitcoin fork is. So a Bitcoin fork is basically just an update to the current system. So what happens with any type of fork is that the blockchain would obviously be on its path, but it would diverge into two different tracks. So that's basically what the fork is. So if you think about it in a physical form, the fork, it goes up and up. This is the blockchain. It just keeps going. But then as we get to the end of the fork, it splits off. And that's exactly what we're talking about with a blockchain Bitcoin fork. It goes up and up. So this is the blockchain, and then it diverges into two, depending on the type of update that is happening. So if you think about it in these terms, say you have an iPhone or an Android, and you get a notification that there's a software update that's being released. Well, what happens is when you opt in to update your phone, update the software, then the old software and what you were using completely is kind of disregarded, and you go on the new update. And that's kind of exactly what's happening here. The coders and different people behind the Bitcoin and the blockchain network and trying to make it better are coming up with new updates and new ways to improve the bugs, improve scalability, and things of that nature. So that's what a Bitcoin fork is. So now let's talk about hard forks and soft forks. So a hard fork is basically where the blockchain diverges into two, but the type of fork that happens is one that disregards the old and starts a completely new blockchain, a new trend with new rules. So you can think of a hard fork as a widening of the rules, a changing of the old system that can't be run on the current blockchain, so it has to start a completely new one. And you may have heard what's happening within the type of updates that they're trying to release. So basically, right now there's a 1 megabyte block size, and they want to expand that to 2 megabytes. But doing that would create a hard fork because you're changing the old rules. So what's happening with this is basically, say you have a block and it's this size, and in between this block, you can only fit so many transactions in a certain period of time. Well, because the network is growing so heavily, so quickly, with a lot of different users around the world, only so many transactions can fit inside this block, and that's why it's obviously taking longer, it's costing more, etc., etc. So for scalability wise, if they widen this block so more transactions could fit in, that's exactly what they're trying to do. But that would be a hard fork shift, as that update to the system would obviously change the old rules and would create a new blockchain and a new way of doing things. So what really depends on this is the percentage of people and miners who are willing to integrate this new software. So say 51% wanted the hard fork and they wanted to change the rules and they went this way, and 49% went this way. That would create two different types of cryptocurrencies. So that's the interesting debate. What's going on at the moment is because there's kind of this butting heads of what we should do and kind of where the power should lie within the system, within the network. So that's a hard fork. Changing of the rules, widening of the rules, veering off because they're shifting away from the old. So a soft fork is basically a patching up of the current system. So you're adding patches to get rid of bugs, try and improve certain things, try and improve scalability, but you're not changing the fundamental way that the system was built, the way the Bitcoin blockchain platform was created. You're just adding patches to it. You're trying to improve it, but not completely change it. So you may have heard of segregated witness. So basically that's a type of soft fork where they're trying to add patches to the current system to improve it, but not completely alter it. So the blockchain and Bitcoin would still continue on. They would just patch up certain things that wouldn't create two completely different cryptocurrencies, but would, diverge, but the blockchain would still continue and Bitcoin would still continue as it is currently doing. So to just sum that up, to think about hard forks and soft forks, hard forks are basically a shift from the old and trying to create something new. And a soft fork is kind of a tightening of the rules and trying to patch things up, and there's not a complete shift. Hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. So now the real thing is, should a fork happen and what type of fork should happen? And there's a lot of controversy happening because of people's interests and the network's interests. So for example, changing the block size from 1 megabytes to 2 megabytes and a certain type of update that would occur would do this and obviously create a new cryptocurrency, create a new blockchain, and it would give more control to the miners. And obviously the miners are in favor of this because if they change the block size, obviously we can increase the transactions, increase the scalability. But if we give miners certain powers to alter the block size in the future and potentially dictate fees and different things of that nature, then some type of centralization is taking place within a decentralized world. And obviously Bitcoin has grown so big and so far because of its decentralized nature, and nobody can kind of manipulate or taint the system. So it's very interesting to look at it from that perspective. And obviously these big miners are wanting, some kind of control over it because they are fueling the system, fueling the blockchain and how it's transacting and the way it's working. So they're maybe wanting a little bit of influence over it, but at the same time, it's hard to do that because, as I say, centralization in a decentralized world can always be a little bit because you have kind of the miners and people over here thinking they run more of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Then you have the users who obviously want the best possible situation for them and, for Bitcoin to be still completely fair, open, trusted, all that kind of stuff. Then you have a soft fork, which is obviously going to keep the blockchain as it is and patch certain things up to try and improve it, which will still keep the kind of fundamentals and network basis that it has right now. And I believe that's why that's getting more traction, as more people don't want to give certain powers to the miners and kind of have them dictate certain things which are going on. So when will the fork happen? That's a great question. Possibly in the next couple of months. The real thing is the percentage that comes together and chooses a specific update. So whether that's SegWit, whether that's increasing the block size. It seems that SegWit is getting, which stands for segregated witness, I don't know if I mentioned that, is basically getting a little bit more traction because I think the Bitcoin core team, which is the developers, the biggest team of developers behind Bitcoin blockchain and trying to improve the network, has released. So I think a fork is definitely on the cards and will most likely happen. And it's really a thought process of where Bitcoin wants to go. Because if there is no fork and we leave Bitcoin as it is, then what it fundamentally is an extremely secure exchange of value that can't be used mainstream, but can be used for very secure transactions from country to country, from person to person, but it won't be used for your morning coffee and bacon at the store, because it won't be able to move in a quick enough way to keep up with our society. And then if we do fork and we want to improve the network, increase the block size, increase how many transactions can fit in the block, etc., etc., then we're moving Bitcoin to a more commercialized way. It's still very secure, very open, borderless, trusted, but moving in a way where it can keep up with volume and it can keep up with the way that people obviously want to move it, pay for things, etc., etc. So that's kind of a bigger picture thinking, but just to try and understand why forks are happening, why updates are happening, and why people are kind of butting heads against each other, because they kind of maybe want what's best for them, but this is bigger than anybody. Nobody owns Bitcoin. Nobody owns that blockchain. It regulates itself through different miners and computers, etc., around the world. So I think it's about thinking about what's best for the network, what's best for Bitcoin going forward to still hold its values and still hold exactly why it's been such an amazing and innovative technology for people to have a unmanipulated, trusted form of digital exchange. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. If it was, watch it over again. There are certain terms, this is quite technical, there is kind of no getting away from that. But if you want to understand it, which I think at this point we're at, is very important, because Bitcoin and cryptocurrency isn't mainstream yet, and there obviously are certain things which are going to need to be done with new cryptocurrencies coming out, with Bitcoin trying to grow and be more scalable. Then there are certain things which are going to be kind of techie to understand, to kind of keep up with the industry and where it's moving to. So I hope that video kind of helped with that. If you want any more resources, check out the box below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I've got other stuff coming out. I've got a free newsletter below, bunch of information in there. And I hope you understand what a Bitcoin fork is more so than the 10 minutes before this previous video. So I'm Matt Sheriff. Thank you for watching, digesting this content. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next video, and have a great day.